So, Tina, it'd be really cool to share with our listeners a little bit about your PhD that you're currently completing.
Yeah, well, I am doing my PhD. It's a qualitative study looking at women's experience of navigating healthcare systems, seeking out assessment and possible diagnosis of autism and ADHD. It's there's not a lot of research out there with women's voices in the forefront talking about how they experience this journey. And yeah, I'm very, very, very passionate about women, women's experiences in healthcare because we have got a very long history in our culture of framing women as being hysterical and we're just a bit neurotic really, so everything gets put in the anxiety basket, and it's not so. Anxiety is often a component of these things, but yeah, women are often overlooked, misdiagnosed, misunderstood, and which essentially prevents them from understanding themselves and accessing really helpful treatment options because of these gender biases.
Yeah. Strangely enough, though, I would say something that contributes to a lot of the anxiety that my clients experience around engaging in healthcare systems is that they won't be taken seriously or they won't be listened to because they've had so many experiences where they've been shut down or dismissed or judged because, like, particularly, I mean, I can speak for myself, like, as an autistic person, if even though I am a healthcare provider, like when I go to my appointments, I feel really nervous as well. And sometimes I, fumble over my words and I forget things and all this kind of thing. And I think sometimes that might be perceived as like you're not being like not trustworthy or like you're making it up or you're not being clear. It's like, well, if you can't remember, then it mustn't be happening. But like, when I'm a bit nervous, like my memory's not great on a good day. So like if I'm feeling a bit nervous, like my brain's just going to go blank and I'm not going to be able to remember. And it's yeah, so it's interesting in the sense that it's like, oh well, oh it's just anxiety. And it's like, yeah, it's anxiety because they're worried that like the health professional's not going to listen to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is. It's such a common experience where people are talking about that feeling like they're not going to be taken seriously. And then when they muster the courage to and take the leap of faith and have a go, they experience exactly that. And it's like, oh, yes, that's exactly how I expected it to be. And there's, it's really unsettling because that can absolutely halt a person's exploration of their struggles, their stress. You internalize that, and it's just negative outcomes from there. So and there's lots of reasons why the healthcare system is like this. It's not just horrible mean doctors and so forth. It's there's so many contributing factors to why that is. And it really starts with the like the understanding of autism and ADHD. And like back when both those diagnoses were first established, it was really male centric research, and samples that they studied to develop the diagnostic criteria. So they only saw it as being, a male orientated diagnosis. And only the females who presented with that similar profile and in an extreme way would like be able to access a diagnosis and treatment.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like if you are presenting really anxious and unwell, they don't listen to you. But then if you turn up and you're really organized and you've got your notebook, then it's like, oh well, you're not struggling so much. So you'll be all right then. Like she'll be all right.
Well, that's absolutely true, and that's another factor that comes into the gender bias in the diagnosis of autism and ADHD, and that's the component of social conditioning, because I'm sure everybody's heard those sayings, like, oh, boys will be boys, they need a lot of space to be able to run around and burn off all that energy. Well, a lot of girls need that as well. But the descriptors that fit under the label of good girl are typically the girl who sits still, the girl who's quiet, the girl who speaks when spoken to, the girl who is helpful and compliant and accommodating, all of these sorts of things. And, most children, if not all children, want to be seen as a good kid. So they put a lot of energy into fitting what they learn is the ideal good girl and the ideal good boy. So females learn from a very young age how to internalize everything. So we have these different types of ADHD now, which is inattentive, hyperactive, or combined. And there are lots of researchers out there like Russell Barkley, for example, who talk about those being a bit rubbish and people can mix and match between them. But the inattentive type is typically put towards females. And, when you think about that social conditioning and the internalizing of everything, it makes sense that the ADHD female is sitting there perfectly still in their head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So from externally, it may appear that even if they do have an ADHD diagnosis, like, even if they do get the diagnosis, that they could be diagnosed with an inattentive presentation when they're actually masking the hyperactive symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned like showing up to the doctors completely organized with your notebook and all your notes written down. That's another component of social conditioning that females go through. We are the organized head of the family and all of those sorts of things. And yeah, so a lot of energy goes into trying to counter our ADHD symptoms around, disorganization, chaos, forgetfulness, all of those sorts of things. So we become hyper organized, and yeah, that often also leads to more dismissal because, well, you can't be an ADHD. You're organized. You have success in your life. You're not drowning under unpaid bills, and you got through education. Yeah, no, you're not an ADHD. It's just really, really disheartening and frustrating.
Yeah, and I guess like that's a strategy that I found that helpful for me is if I'm going to an appointment, I might have like a few dot points down on my phone or something like that so I don't forget. And that's something that I encourage my clients to do as well. Like if they're feeling quite nervous or they're not sure or they're worried they're going to forget things. And this isn't just for like for an assessment for autism and ADHD. It can just be like going to your GP and things like that. But yeah, unfortunately, there's so many misconceptions that it's just like, I think, unfortunately, for a lot of people, it just feels way too much. And like some of my clients, we've had so many discussions, sometimes over like months or even years, where they're umming and ahhing about going to see someone for an assessment, but but yeah, like it takes them so long to build up the courage to be able to do that. And unfortunately, on the rare occasion, people have gone and they've been told, oh no, you're not autistic, you're not ADHD, it's just trauma or it's just anxiety or it's just whatever, which I'm not saying that those things are just, because they're within their right, quite challenging. But I just think when it comes to like autism and ADHD, there's so many co-occurring experiences, whether that's, other like, mental health or neurodivergencies, or whether it's,
Mm.
health issues, like physical health issues, chronic health conditions. And yeah, I think it's just because of all these co-occurring challenges, things often don't present as they would for a neurotypical or I guess a neuronormative type individual.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's, I've had a couple of young female ADHDers. Actually, no, they're both of them autistic ADHD, and they went off to see doctors for assessment and diagnosis, and both of them were told, "Oh yeah, I can see the ADHD, but we need to manage the anxiety first before we can understand whether or not it's really ADHD." And both of them like, "Oh, I've been trying to deal with this anxiety for years and years and years," and both put in monumental efforts to deal with, manage their anxiety. And it's like, this is, what if the anxiety is because of unmanaged ADHD? And what if we actually address the ADHD? Maybe some of that anxiety will dissipate because I'll no longer be, so dysregulated with my attention and concentration. I'll be able to get some things done and, maybe just feel a sense of satisfaction in myself.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I've worked with people who have had like a long-standing anxiety or like depression diagnosis. And as I said, like for some folks that are autistic ADHD, they can have like co-occurring anxiety and depression. But like they've just had this pervasive anxiety, and they're like, I've tried every medication, I've tried every therapy under the sun, but it doesn't matter what I do, there's this anxiety. And then we like do a bit of a screen for ADHD, and I think, well, and I go, yeah, I think that some of these feelings that you're experiencing may be due to the hyperactivity. Because I guess like for myself, I can say that since I started my ADHD medication, I feel much more calm. Like I
Mm,
just used to just be in this perpetual state of overwhelm. And I thought it was anxiety, but it really wasn't. Like it was just in my body and in my life and everything, like my brain's going super fast and there's all these demands and everything. And yeah, now that I'm taking my medication, I feel much calmer in my mind and my body. I can focus. Like, when you can't like pay attention, to your thoughts, to your environment, to your internal sensations simultaneously, like it's really challenging. Even talking, I found it quite difficult to be able to gather my thoughts and to speak sometimes, particularly when I was really exhausted. So when there's all of these additional barriers all day, every day, it's going to
mm.
get overwhelming. Like you're going to get more and more exhausted.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And to be told that over and over and over again that it's anxiety and you need to go and learn some strategies to manage that. When you know how much effort you've put into learning those strategies and applying those strategies to no avail, it's really stressful. And it's actually quite embarrassing as well. I believe that when you go to a healthcare provider and you're trying really hard to get across what's happening for you, and you're being sort of told you're wrong, or there's that, it's that facial expression, it's that tone of voice that sort of says, like, oh, calm down, you're overreacting a little bit, um, or I think the worst thing is, well, why would you want to be, looking for labels for yourself? Why would you want to do that to yourself?
Mhm.
And it's like, well, it offers a way to understand what's going on, and it also opens up the option of treatment and learning different strategies. So it's really important that we change these attitudes and how autism and ADHD are viewed, because it's not just 6-year-old boys that are bouncing off the walls that are ADHDers, and equally so, it's not just young boys who are sitting there, you know, lining up their Matchbox cars that are autistic. There are many different ways to be ADHD and autistic.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I guess the thing that is the most important to consider is that barriers to diagnosis equals barriers to treatment and support. So, if folks, you know, I mean, assessments are often really expensive,
Mm,
which, some people may have been saving for months or years even to be able to afford to see someone for an assessment, and then just to be turned away without any kind of outcome. And like I will say, like a lot of my clients, they are like they will research the heck out of things before they even come to see me.
mm,
They'll, so like it's not like, and I think this is the issue is people go, oh, well, you just watched a TikTok reel and now you think, oh, you're autistic or
yeah.
ADHD. And it's like, no, it's like maybe someone did see one and go, oh, that's interesting. But like people spend months, even years, going back and forth in their mind trying to decide if they want to take a chance or take a risk. So
Mm.
when someone has gone through all that emotional lamenting, they've saved the money, they get there, and then basically they're just told, well, you just have to kind of suffer with, your challenges, and sorry, and also you can't access anything that's going to help you.
Mm, absolutely. I really appreciate it when a new client comes along, or you know, existing client, and they'll say to me, "Oh, they often will start by saying, oh, you know." I know you're not supposed to self-diagnose, but I saw this thing and I feel bad for them because like it takes a lot of courage to tell someone that, you know, this kind of feels like it fits. And I always say to them, you know, look, you're the expert on you. If you've come across something that resonates with you and feels like it fits, let's talk about that because that's important and that's relevant.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, but let's respectfully go through it all together, so to help you understand, because yeah, there's a reason that this makes sense to you. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. And I
um
mean, oh, sorry.
no, I was going to say it's just important to be like a safe space and not judge. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And like I'm just thinking, I've had my business for what, 3.5 years now, and I couldn't tell you how many clients that I've seen, but majority of them have been like autistic ADHDers, and there is not one person who's come to see me who has self-identified and I've gone, yeah, no. Often they might come and go, oh, I think I'm autistic. And I'll be like, oh, I think you might also like be ADHD as well. Like not one person has ever come to me and I, as a accredited mental health social worker, I can't do formal assessments, but I will do like a screening measure, and then I'll kind of write a letter to their GP, so that it gives them a little bit more confidence and something to back it, and then they can go see a psychiatrist and or a clinical psychologist in order to be able to get that assessment. But yeah, not one person has ever come to me and I've gone, no, actually, I don't think. If anything, there's more that's going on for them that they haven't identified that I identify.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's been my experience as well. That when people come and they're curious, usually, yeah, they usually are. Yeah. And yeah, I think people should just yeah, just listen to people, you know. I think that yeah, if someone's put that much energy and effort into understanding the ins and outs of the diagnostic criteria, it's probably for good reason. You know, people generally speaking don't don't spend that much time on something for no good reason.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I certainly would do that.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, like throughout, like you're in the kind of the beginning stages. Oh, I don't know, you're up to your second year with your PhD, I think.
Yeah,
Just
technically, yeah. My
yeah,
first milestone was in January, but I thought that was such a terrible date because nothing's really operational there.
um, yeah, so yeah, forgive me if you haven't kind of got up to all this yet, but I was just wondering, like, obviously there's like barriers for like I guess gender. Are there other like intersectionalities that experience similar sort of challenges to diagnosis because of their identity or their circumstance or
Oh, definitely. I think that when you then, so if looking at people who are of, lower socioeconomic resources, uh, there's not a lot of Australian research on this. So you go over to the States, the US, and the African American community and the Latino community have far less prevalence of ADHD and autism than the white community. And I mean, autism and ADHD is not it's not gendered, it's not race, it's not none of these things. So why is it? And yeah, the research really does state that it's got to do with socioeconomic status and access to resources, because as we pointed out before, it's expensive and it's not easily accessible. But then on top of that, there's also the LGBTIQ plus community. It's a hard space to navigate for queer folk, because there's a lot of the healthcare system isn't always a safe space to start with, and then you're looking for a safe space within a safe space to talk about neurological differences. That's really challenging.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And you're right. Like a lot of I work with a lot of queer and non-binary and trans folk, and yeah, it's there's a lot of, and particularly in regards to some of the things that are going on in Queensland at the moment. Yeah, just a lot of fear around wanting to find safe spaces. So there's just there's a lot.
Which is
Anyway, it's like
it's
I'm like,
really
oh my God, it's so depressing. But it is.
yeah, and it's quite bizarre because like I get a bit frustrated when looking at different services that are available, whether it just be about that post-diagnostic support, which there's not a great deal for adults, or the earlier stage assessment and diagnosis, that people advertise themselves as being neuroaffirming and all of these sorts of things. And what we know is that in the neurodivergent community, there is a much higher percentage of LGBTIQ plus people. And because, we don't really ascribe to those social bounds and things like that. So, but yeah, so we know this stuff, but yet all these people out there who are neuroaffirming, but they don't offer the safe space for the largest population or percentage of the population within that group. So yeah, it's just,
Exactly. You can't just like pick and choose, I guess.
yeah.
And as I said, like there's many like co-occurring health issues, but I think there's a lot of complexity to a lot of like autistic ADHDers, and I guess the high prevalence of like gender and sexual diversity. So like if you want to be neuroaffirming, then I think that's something that you really need to take into consideration is do you have a lot of knowledge in working with folk, queer and sexually diverse folk, and also if that's if you can provide that safe space.
Yeah, I think it's really important to address that. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the barriers. Are there any solutions, or is is anyone doing anything to help with these challenges? Yeah.
It's all a big old mess, isn't it? I think that there's lots of conversations going on, which it's the first step. Uh, we we are understanding and more accepting of the sort of broader range of diagnostic presentations, and there's lots more information getting out there, but it is, it is a slow process changing these things, because the whole DSM was essentially built on men and males, so chipping away one by one sort of thing. There is change happening, but it is slow. And I think that there's lots of social media is good for finding those healthcare professionals that do offer a safe space, where people are talking about their experiences. So that can be helpful, but also not so helpful, because everybody has their own their own interpretation of an experience. So I guess be aware when reading those reviews.
Yeah. And I think like when it comes to being like neuroaffirming, it's important to make a bit of an assessment around whether it's kind of this tokenistic thing that people have put on their website to get clients. Something also to consider as well is just because someone has a lived experience of being autistic ADHD doesn't necessarily mean that they're neuroaffirming. Like I can speak for myself personally. I was clinically trained. I also didn't know I was an autistic ADHDer. But as I learned I was an autistic ADHDer, and I understood myself more, and I understood that I really needed to do better if I was going to work with, this community. Like I think like a few years ago, I definitely couldn't have said that I was neuroaffirming. Even like I self-identified before I got a formal diagnosis. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that like for me to feel confident to say that I have a neuroaffirming practice, I've spent a lot of time reading and not just that, but reflecting on myself, reflecting on my practice, talking about it with Tina. Like that's kind of how Divergent Dialogues started, because we'd have all these different conversations about, well, what is neuroaffirming? Because everyone has a different idea of what that looks like. And it's this iterative process of constantly looking at your practice and going, oh, okay, like how can I mold this better or change this or be more flexible so it's going to be able to meet my clients' needs a lot better. And over the years my knowledge just grew and grew and grew. So I think like having a good look at their website, and if they have social media or thing like that, having a look there. And because I think sometimes people are like, oh well, if they're an autistic ADHD then they're going to be neuroaffirming. Not necessarily. Yeah.
And I think something else that can be helpful is that reaching criteria for official diagnosis. One of the components of that is the impact that the using DSM language, that the symptoms and traits have on your life, but specifically the negative impact. So how much do these symptoms, traits and whatnot interfere in your life and, create disruption? So you can be an autistic person, an ADHD, both, and not meet criteria for diagnosis, because if you build a life around yourself that suits you, the way your brain works, what you need, then you're not going to run into as many challenges associated with being an autistic ADHD in this world that we live in, and that can be a difficult thing to sort of get your head around as well, that being an autistic person or an ADHD, but not actually being diagnosed as one.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, but also like if you're someone who masks a lot and you have like 10,000 layers of internalized ableism because you've learnt to internalize everything, even if you do have a lot of challenges, I mean, like, even for me, it wasn't until I fully accepted, um, even after I was diagnosed, it took me a long time to really accept how much my life was impacted by my disability. Like,
Yes.
it took me so long because I'd spent my whole life basically trying to pretend to myself and everyone that I didn't have any challenges. So,
Yes.
but like, I do find this for my clients and even in my own experience is that the older you get, the more challenging that is to kind of keep up. And it is hard to accept when you do have, you do have disability. I think that when it comes to autism and ADHD, like, obviously we want to be neuroaffirming and we want to be supportive and we don't want to kind of focus on these deficits. But I think it's also really validating to people to go, like, yes, like, you do have a genuine disability, which means that you have support needs, and that's totally okay. But yeah, even for myself, even as a professional, that's something that I really had to work through so that I could see my needs so that I could address them.
Yeah, definitely. In my own journey, there was a clear point where I had to work on that internalized ableism that I hold primarily for myself, to apply to myself, and really get comfortable with that term of disability and how that applies to me, because again, the world that we live in, it does not treat people with a disability kindly. And I think that there's another layer of complexity when it's a invisible disability. So those expectations are really high for people with invisible disability. And yeah, like one of my really favorite things to do with the people that I work with is when they come along post diagnosis and they're telling me that they think that the assessment was wrong, and it's like, oh, I don't know, maybe I just convinced them that I'm an autistic person or I'm an ADHD. I probably faked it. And it's like, no, I don't think you did. And going through a lot of the things that they can't get their head around, like, but I am an organized person and I'm not late for things. And like, well, why is that? Let's look at that. And well, I've got my diary and everything goes in that. I'm like, okay, like, how much do you rely on that diary? How much energy do you have to put into organizing everything, and recognizing that you've developed this strategy to cope and manage and mitigate the impact, but it's absolutely sucking you dry of energy, and it creates anxiety because your life's going to fall apart if you lose your diary. And yeah, that's significant. So yeah, you're right, you are organized, but you're a basket case because of it.
Like, if I lost my phone, like, if I didn't have a phone or a computer or anything, I would
Mm,
have absolutely no idea what was on my agenda, what I needed to do. I probably wouldn't know what day it was. Like,
yep.
I'll read my list of my clients in the morning, and like, by the time I get to work, I'll have forgot who's the first client that I'm seeing.
Yeah, same. I'm
Like,
exactly the same.
so yeah, I think, yeah, that's something that's really important to consider. But yeah, unfortunately for a lot of my clients, it's the same, just this
Mm.
like imposter syndrome of like, oh, well, I've just like convinced myself of this, and this isn't, I'm just like lying to myself and I'm making this up and I've just fabricated this whole story. And I go, oh, well, if that's the case, that's pretty impressive. Like, you
Mm.
spent a lot of time and effort in doing that. And if that were the case, then I think that would still be concerning because that's not something that someone would typically do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really, I just, logically, I don't see why people would spend so much time, effort, and money for something that they weren't sure of, even if they did feel like an imposter.
Yeah. Well, there is the accusation of ADHD as being like drug seeking fiends, and it's all about looking for that stimulant prescription, which, you know, in itself is also completely ridiculous. Like, I am aware that there is a street trade for those things, and you know, quite often it is about you know, getting through exams and all of that kind of jazz. But yeah, people who really identify as being an ADHDer and recognizing all of those challenges within themselves, when you know that there is this medication out there that has made a difference for people, it kind of makes perfect sense that they're on a mission to get a prescription for it. Because what if that is the thing that helps regulate them? What if that is the thing that helps them keep this job because I've already lost 10? You know, I think that it really does. ADHD isn't completely you know, treated or managed with one pill every morning. There's
Oh,
lot. Okay.
sorry, you might have to let the NDIS know that, because according to them, ADHD is completely treatable with medication. No further support needed.
Yes, and you know, a lot of doctors are kind of a bit the same. It's like they'll write the prescription and then that's it. There's not a lot of follow-up support or anything beyond that, because it's like, well, you've got this pill now, so everything's fine. But there is lots more that goes into it. But nonetheless, if you're recognizing that you have all of these challenges, and you know that there is something out there that can make a difference, it makes a lot of sense to me that you would be on a mission to get the prescription to do that.
And also, it's important to consider that, like, there is a high prevalence of substance use for undiagnosed ADHDers, because
Yes.
they don't know that they're an ADHDer, or they don't have access to medication, and they're using substances to like, you know, illicit substances to be able to treat that, either
Mm.
knowingly or unknowingly. So it's kind of like, you know, just because there may be some people who are, you know, seeking that medication, and perhaps it's not, you know, a fit for, you know, their needs, and they are wanting to use it for those purposes. But why should this population of people have to miss out on treatment? But also, upon further look, that person may actually have ADHD anyway, potentially, and just not know it themselves.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because yeah, alcohol is a real common one that is you know, misused amongst the ADHD population, and it really helps with people start using it because they find it helpful with winding down in the afternoon, with navigating social events and situations, all of those sorts of things, and it becomes a slippery slope from there. But the difficulty is that once you've been labeled as problematic substance use, then that becomes another barrier to accessing pharmacological treatment for ADHD, because it's like, well, no, you've misused this medication or you've misused substances, so you're going to misuse this now. You can't have that. Yeah, it's a really tricky space for people to navigate.
Like a labyrinth.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway,
Good
but
work.
so basically, it sounds like, Tina, you've got your work cut out for you with this PhD, because
Yeah,
you're going to have to solve all these issues. You know, it's
yeah.
all up to you. No, I'm kidding. But
Taking it
yeah,
on.
but no, like, I think, like, a lot of people are, like, either people with lived experience, or people who do live do work within the healthcare system, are starting to advocate and try and make these changes. And as you said, it's going to take time.
Mm.
I do think there is hope. There are a lot of challenges, but it's, as you said, we're at the start. So we're at the start. So we need to understand all the challenges. So it's like the assessment phase. We need to know, okay, what's going on? So then we
Yeah,
can go on to the next phase and go, you know, all right, what do we do about this? Yeah.
Yeah, look, I agree, and I guess we've really highlighted some of the negatives and the really shitty points of all of this. But I guess to be fair to the world, everything has to start somewhere, and the diagnosis of autism and ADHD did start with young, young males because like a lot of things in the mental health space, it doesn't get any recognition or until it starts causing discomfort and problems for people. So it does make sense that these young boys with externalized behaviors that were disrupting, education, family life, they're the ones that came to the attention of the medical professionals first. And everything has to start somewhere. It's grown from there. And we are at a point now where they're recognizing that, both autism and ADHD on a spectrum of challenges, strengths, limitations, all those things. And we're at a point now where women are sort of saying, hey, I'm struggling with some stuff too. And yeah, it doesn't quite look like that externalized problematic behavior, but it's really causing me some stress. So yeah, help. And yeah, people are starting to listen, which is a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent. All right, I think that might be a good place to finish up. Was there anything else that you felt you wanted to? I mean, we could probably be here for a few hours.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, like, that's a dangerous question to ask.
All right, we might wrap it up there because I think some of these themes we're going to talk about in episodes that are coming up, like
Yep.
the substance use. I think we are going to talk about internalized ableism a little bit more as well, so we can unpack some of these things in other episodes. But
Yep.
otherwise, yeah, as always, thanks for joining us, everyone, and well, I guess you'll hear us next time.